prosecuting attorney, Jerry Jarzynka. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning. How are both of you today?
Good, thanks.
Good.
How are
Thanks
you?
for being here.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the invite. I appreciate that.
Just this past weekend, you were part of the annual Victims' Rights Memorial. We actually have a physical tribute to those families who have lost someone due to violence in Jackson County.
Yes, we had this past Saturday at the Cascades Park, towards the eastern part of the park. Great turnout. We had over 100 people show up. Actually, we had homicide victim Clayton Orange, his sister and her husband actually drove from Saginaw just to attend the event.
Wow.
So you can tell just by that example alone how that type of memorial and that service has impacted families. It has really helped them out. Not only to honor their family members, their loved ones, but I think also it kind of creates an environment where they feel that their loved ones being remembered, not only honored. And it's a place you can come to not just that one day of the year, but throughout the year. And hats off to the rec department for the county, Kyle Lewis. I mean, they just finished putting some concrete or cement in that area and some other landscaping. So it was a beautiful setting on Saturday. It's the best I've seen it, you know. And I really have to step back a little bit and credit someone, Larry Mentek, who really was a driving force for this whole memorial that got created at the Cascades. You know, his story was, you know, Larry passed away at the end of last year, but his son James was murdered during a robbery in 1989 at a Buddy Minis Mart in town, and the robber shot his son 6 times. You know, it wasn't necessary, and they didn't want to leave a witness. So out of that horrible tragedy, Larry gathered other people together and raised funds and built a monument in 2005 at the base of the Cascade Falls. And it was there for a number of years until about 2017. It moved to its current location, along with the one of the steel girders to the 911, the Twin Towers building, in its current spot. So, you know, because of his efforts, it's really impacted a lot of families and victims that have this memorial and this actual service. So we missed him this year, and certainly pointed out, I mean, his great contribution to this whole thing. It, you know, probably wouldn't have happened had he not stepped forward and got involved like that.
Yeah, thinking about the victims, of course, going beyond the headlines, right? And you know, there are folks, you talked about a 40-year,
right,
you know, a 30-year thing. I mean, we have people living with us that are victims, or their families been victims of crimes, and it's important that the community understands what they're going through.
Right, and you know, I also want to thank Sue Vogt. She's our victims' rights coordinator in our office, and her whole staff, who basically organized and put on the event, and went very smoothly. We also had some generous donations from Big B Coffee, the Wisner Street location, again for the 5th year, and also Pro DJs provided a sound system pro bono, which was excellent there. So it was a great morning. And you know, the service isn't really that long, but then the family members do stick around the monument and mingle, and they'd like to talk to prosecutors and staff, and you know, just take a moment to remember their loved ones. So that was really a beautiful event.
Yeah, I remember when Larry first came up with this idea. It was people just, I don't know. It's, you know, it was a big push that he had to get people on board, and I'm glad that he was successful. It's just unfortunate that we have to add names to this every year. But it also demonstrates to the community that victims have rights, and that the county has a whole department that wants to ensure that if you're a victim of crime, there's somebody, you've got an advocate.
You know, the victims' rights law, you know, it's part of our state constitution as well as state statutes. So, you know, if you're a prosecutor, whether it's a felony crime or a serious misdemeanor, victims have rights if they want to activate them, and we do, you know, reach out to them, get their input on cases for those, especially those types of crimes. So that's important, because before, you know, let's say 19 89, 88, victims didn't have those protections, and they tend to get lost in the system. And if you're not someone who's, in the court system week in and week out, you come there as a victim, it can be really a cold and alien place. You don't know what's going on. So the Victims' Rights Unit, it's a safe place to come to the courthouse. You have advocates can go with you, kind of explain the process, because there's usually multiple court dates, can understand what's going on and act as a liaison with you and the assistant prosecutor handling the case, so you can have a better understanding of what's happening, as opposed to the past, you're really kind of out in the dark, you don't know what's going on.
You guys have been very active trying to put together information on the drug abuse, and we've had a lot of summits and groups of people in the community talking, and Drug Summit 7 is coming up, right? It is.
We've had quarterly meetings of our task force on heroin and prescription drug abuse. Our last drug summit was put on by Drug Free Jackson. It was the year before COVID hit. So because of COVID, like a lot of other things, basically, pushed some events back. And so we've had discussions that we're going to hold a drug summit this coming March at the American One Event Center. So really at the initial planning stages of that. So we're excited by that. Definitely great progress was made by the task force through a number of different work groups here. But we're really looking forward to kind of getting people back to a drug summit. We have a group discussion and kind of look at what's happening, where we're at, and really calling people back into that effort.
When you're here, you usually have an update on a case or two, and I think you had conclusion of one just this past week.
We did, Bart. Yeah, we had a big jury verdict came in last week, People versus Trayshawn Johnson. It was the shooting that happened outside the Foundry Bar after closing in July of last year, 2021. Ended up with 3 people suffering gunshot wounds, nothing fatal, but still very violent. So the jury came back and convicted him of assault with intent to murder, 3 counts of that, 3 counts of felony firearm, a CCW, and a felon in possession. So really pleased with the verdict, really thankful to the jurors for really spending most of the week listening to evidence and then applying the law and making a determination, which is challenging for jurors. Yeah. And I also want to thank the trial team, Assistant Prosecutor Jeremiah Smith, also Detective Mike Klimmer of the City of Jackson Police Department, and from the Sheriff's Department, Detective Sergeant Sam Sukovich. They did a great job getting the case ready for trial and then preparing it and presenting it. So well done.
That's great. Driving under the influence of marijuana is of course illegal, but there's been some issues with the blood testing. Has there been anything moving forward in that?
That's a good question. In the end of August, the prosecutors got a note from the state police communication saying that they had a problem with their when you submit blood that's taken as evidence, let's say it's a drunk driving, and it's marijuana drunk driving is a suspicion, that they had a problem in determining did the test really accurately show THC or is it CBD, CBD oil. Yeah. So obviously because of that, we had to really put a hold on using that kind of test results until we find out more of what's going on from the crime lab of what test results are affected, and they were supposed to let individual counties know what cases might be affected. And so far I have not received anything from the state police indicating what cases we have might be affected. But it may not be as drastic as you think, because normally when the police do get a search warrant to get blood for testing potential crime, they take 2 vials of blood. So there's always an additional vial of blood, so that they keep that for at least a year, so that we can then go to an independent third party if we need to retest. So I believe that's probably what's going to happen. Yeah. We just have to know which cases might be impacted by the state police.
Yeah, interesting.
But you could still be guilty of
course,
impaired driving.
You can.
On observation by the officer.
You can. Yeah, there's a number of different pieces of evidence that you look at. Of course, you look at bad driving. There's a traffic stop. The officer has his observations, but he also does what's known as field sobriety test, you know, whether it's walk a straight line or recite the alphabet, recite some numbers, answer questions. So those are all observations which can be used as evidence in a trial if need be.
Yeah. The other driving issue that I think concerns a lot of people, the using the cell phone while you're driving, and I know there's been a push in Lansing to modify the laws dealing with cell phone use. Right. Are we seeing is it a big problem in Jackson County?
Haven't seen, you know, a tremendous number of cases like that, but we have seen cases where you know, suspicion is there's distracted driving going on, and so it can be evidence. But have we seen like a huge spike in those cases? No, we have not.
But we have had deaths.
Yeah, of course, you hear a lot about it after the fact. You know, in a tragic case, someone was using their phone or something like that. But yeah, a lot of times it's hard. That's one that's probably hard for officers and to get in front of. I mean, that's a difficult, very difficult.
Yeah, it's like, what was the person doing with their phone? Were they just holding it?
Yeah, it's tricky.
Were they listening to GPS directions, or were they actually, you know, sending in a resignation letter?
I don't know. Yeah.
Right. So usually you need some other evidence to support your case. You just don't rely on one piece of evidence alone. So
that's why we're not in law enforcement.
Well, you asked Daniel Mahoney about the new jail. What do you think about it?
Well, I as a county elected official, I cannot tell people how to vote on that, but I can say that I'm going to vote to support it. I did take a tour of the jail. I think Andy was in my tour group. Yeah. So it's pretty bad conditions, and the way I look at it is, you know, if it doesn't pass, likelihood there'll be a lawsuit down the road, and you know the county's going to be ordered to pay probably more than what's, you know, on the ballot here this November. I think it's needed. If anyone has any questions, I would invite them to, you know, take a tour or get some information from the Sheriff's Department, because it, you know the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I think just seeing what conditions we have, you know, I think would persuade many people in the county that would show that we do need help there.
Yeah, I would encourage, if you have an opportunity, definitely take that tour if you can. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for all you do in Jackson.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Jerry Jarzynka, Jackson County prosecuting attorney, on the morning show. More after this break.
At Consumers Energy, we believe change is empowering, powering both your home and your business. Change is progress, with a modernized grid that can detect outages and restore power within seconds. Change is reliable. We're talking preventing over 35,000 outages last year reliable. And change is enduring, like our dedication to keep your power running, just as it should. Consumers Energy, a force for you, a force of change.
Now is Extreme's Ram Make the Switch event. Did you know you can custom order a new Ram for less than buying one, and you'll have it in 10 to 12 weeks? Also, have you seen the new Jeep lineup? Lease prices are great this month. Finally, the Extreme buying team would like to purchase your vehicle. Extreme pays top market value. It's easy, safe, and you get paid on the spot. Visit Extreme Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Jackson or online at extremedodge.com.
Oh, yeah. Come along with JTV and Experience Jackson and get to know or reintroduce yourself to some of the best Jackson County has to offer. Join Andy and Rachel as they tour the county, interviewing and highlighting Jackson on a visit with Experience Jackson. Whether it's golf, museums, hotels, or events, we'll give you some great ideas on how to spend time in Jackson. Watch on jtv.tv, YouTube, and Experience Jackson social channels.
The PIC Center is an independent practice that has provided care to the Jackson area for over 25 years. Doctors O'Neill and Cack supervise antibiotic infusions, as well as those for many other conditions, such as inflammatory bowel, joint, and lung disease, anemia, and multiple sclerosis. Our modern facility is open 7 days a week, and the infusion staff will make you feel right at home. Let your doctor know you have a choice where you receive your next infusion. Remember, when you've picked us, you've picked the best.
I go because they have the #1 Coney dogs in Michigan.
I go because their breakfast is the best.
I go because it's a Jackson icon.
Everybody has a